Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the first race reaction of 2023. Yes, the F1 season is finally go. No more winter testing, no more launches, no more of that utter nonsense. We're here. F1 has started. And wasn't it close at the front? Oh, Max Verstappen nearly has someone within 10 seconds of him. Goodness me. That was a pretty dominant display, wasn't it? But I don't mean, away from those at the front, actually really enjoyable race behind, lots to get into, some surprise performances as well, and yeah, I'm going to throw Aston Martin in there. The hype around pre-season, everyone talking them up, and I thought, are we building ourselves up for a massive fall and disappointment? But actually, not a bit of it. Absolutely, really enjoyed that. But I will always say, in the first stream of the season, if you've been with me for a few years, you'll know I said it for Australia as well. The problem with the first race of the season is it could be the worst race you've ever seen, but because we've had racing again, I'm still going to love it. So there you go. A little bit biased in that respect, I suppose. Hope you're all doing well this evening. Who we got with us then? Very quickly, let's have a look. Hi to Thomas. I don't want to talk about it, Jonathan. Don't ever check the football score before you go live. I had a cry. I'm okay. I'll get over it. Hi to Chris as well. Loads of names I could butcher as well, but we'll say hi to Richard, to Cardi, to another Richard, Jonathan, to T, to Daniel Philpott, to Alfie, to Hugh. I won't read your surname. I'll do it on another stream, I promise. To Frodo as well, to Zach. A couple more as they start to come in. De Weberis is here. Good evening, mate. Hi to Rapide, and we'll say hi to F1, Johnny, and is it Todor? There you go. Just a few shout-outs to kick off the first stream of the season. Housekeeping out of the way. Please do drop a like on the stream. Massively appreciated. We'd like to get them in. Do subscribe if you're new. And if you'd like to support the channel, all the links in the description for Super Chats and Streamlabs and all those wonderful things in the description down below. But enough of all that. We've got some racing to talk about, and I've got Jonty with me for this one. Good evening, Jonty. I know you watch a lot of motorsport, mate, but it's good to have F1 back, isn't it?
We have. Hello, everyone. Wasn't a barnstormer, but it certainly wasn't bad. How did we like that?
I was just saying at the start, I think, away from the front, there's lots of intrigue behind, wasn't there? And lots going on. And I think surprises, teams doing better on race day than they were in qualifying, people doing worse in race day than they did in qualifying. I enjoyed that. I mean, I'll ask chat what they give it out of 10. Straight in at the deep end, Jonty, what would you say out of 10? I reckon a bit of bias because it's the first race, so 7, 8, maybe 8, somewhere around there.
Oh, no, not that high.
Really? Oh, yeah. Jonty, you disappoint
5.5.
me. 5.5.
No, I'll be nice. Let's say 6. Just because we've been waiting so long.
Unless you're a McLaren or Ferrari fan, and then maybe if you're a McLaren fan, maybe about 2, if you're lucky. No, I think 7. 7 feels good to me. I think it was all right, but we'll get into the reaction itself. As always, we'll go through the field. These are going to be a lot more loose than they usually are, though. I'm not going to keep them too tight. We end up where we end up. To be honest, is what we're going with this year. We'll start at the very front, though, Jonty, as we always do for these. Red Bull, I mean, yeah, I joked at the start, pretty close at the front. Max Verstappen, 11.9 seconds clear. Probably could have been more than that. Was in cruise control, really. Took the lead off the start, or kept the lead off the start. Little bit of close stuff early on with Perez and Leclerc and Sainz on the run to turn 1. I was expecting a big crash. I was expecting a Singapore situation, Verstappen, Raikkonen, Vettel with those 2 Ferraris and that Red Bull in there. I thought, oh no, they're going to collide, but they didn't. And that was kind of about as dramatic as it got for, you can't even say that was for Verstappen, can you? He got to see that in his mirrors, and then that was game over, untouchable. Are you surprised by that, or were you one of these fully expecting after testing?
It was pretty, obviously it's just testing, as we keep saying all the time, every year. But all the indications were there that they were well clear. But I still don't think it's quite as dominant as it might seem on the surface. Because he got the good getaway, but then there was a lot of scrabbling behind him that cost people a hell of a lot of time. That really gave him that opportunity to get away. And then, about 5-6 laps in, he's already made 4 or 5 second gap. So he doesn't have to worry at that point. That's when the strategy starts that early. What I was surprised by was them going soft, hard.
Yeah.
that really did throw me for a loop because I assumed, starting on the softs, everyone would go to the hard next so that they've got that freedom at the end. Even without a new set of softs, they've still got the option to go to a scrub set just in case. But no. Red Bull are looking strong, but they are not going to steamroll the field like they did last year.
I guess it depends as well how much Verstappen reined things in as well, doesn't it? I suppose. But then, if it's closer than people are expecting after testing, then that can only be a good thing. And hopefully, Ferrari will come back strong, and Aston will be in the mix, and Mercedes will get better. We'll talk about those guys a little bit later. But I mean, in my notes for Verstappen, which by the way I'm typing this year because I remembered I owned a computer, so that was a fight in my handwriting. I wrote Verstappen began to disappear early on. End of lap 4, 3.4 seconds clear of Leclerc, 7 seconds clear by the end of lap 10. Only real issue he had was a bit of locking at the rear with downshifts, which eventually he said were manageable, but still not good. So that's something to look into for Red Bull. But that was about as dramatic as his day got, and it was pretty damn comfortable. I suspect early doors we could be looking at something close to maybe the domination we've seen from Mercedes in the past, or Schumacher and Ferrari, but I'd be surprised if that runs all season, not because I'm trying to create drama just for the sake of it, but because you've got things to consider, like not just because of their lack of wind tunnel time that came with the penalty, but also just their lack of wind tunnel time when it came to finishing first in the championship last year. Everybody else has got more, significantly more in some cases, and that could make a difference. So I think as the season gets going and gets moving, I think we will see that gap come down. But I guess it's a positive then, Jonty, is what you're saying, is they're not as far clear as we thought. So if the scaling wind tunnel time works as intended, then it could be nice and close come summer break. I guess if you're not a Red Bull fan, the only hope is that they're not 80, 90, 100 points clear at the top of the championship by the summer break.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. They've got such a massive deficit in their ability to develop this year. And that is going to sting. And we've seen, we saw last year how much development can make a massive difference. I mean, particularly the Mercedes, even though they were on somewhat limited development that they could do as a result of last year, they were still the reigning constructors champions. But that's really going to sting Red Bull. And whilst they may bag a lot of points early on, Aston in particular are going to be able to do so much more. And Mercedes are going to struggle to catch that up. Ferrari will just stay where they are.
Bless them, because what they sort of do, don't they? But just thank you very much to, is it Card or Cardi or Carde? Thank you so much for your super chat. Says, let's get the season going and buy Charles Leclerc a pillow to hug the poor guy and throw Alonso a party. Thank you so much for your super chat and your support, mate. Really appreciate that. We'll come to Ferrari in a bit, but I just want to say about Perez while we're on Red Bull, not a great start, not horrendous, but not a great start. That kind of, as you've alluded to, Jonty, really helped Verstappen early doors, wasn't really challenged into turn one as much. Leclerc was there, but not really realistic and asleep down the outside, was he? So Perez, not a great start. Close to contact with Sainz. He was squeezed a little bit by Leclerc, but that's just the sort of thing we see off the line. Usually it's fine. Sometimes you get a Zhou incident, a Russell Zhou incident, but that was just just a good squeeze from Leclerc. And that was really it for him for a while. Managed to reel in Leclerc, got past him, turn one on lap 26, and picked up the DRS as well after that move to defend. So kind of what Verstappen was trying to do last year to Leclerc, Perez actually managed to do, didn't he? Because he managed to get sort of alongside Leclerc towards turn one, but then keep the right side of the DRS line so he could pick it up for the run to turn 4. So good stuff from Checo, but 11.9 seconds behind his teammate. I know we're talking about Verstappen versus Perez here. It's not, no disrespect to Checo, he's not on that level, is he? But I think he'll want that gap to be significantly less than that, if I'm going to be stating the obvious today, Jonty. I think that's one thing Checo will be looking to do as we go to sort of Saudi Arabia and onwards, if it is looking early doors, like Red Bull are going to be solidly the team to beat, let's say.
Yeah, Checo did get hung out to dry a bit on the start, which really hurt as everyone veered right. I mean, they were in the pit lane exit at one point. It was. I was wondering if someone was going to get pushed right off the track. It was very, very aggressive, but it did feel like Leclerc was holding him up a little bit. Just had that air of can just about get close enough, but the Ferrari was a rocket ship in a straight line. I mean, that's why it took Alonso a few attempts.
Yes, that's fair, isn't it? I suppose if he's held up a bit in turn one, held up by Leclerc, probably wouldn't have caught Verstappen to fight him for the win, but that gap does naturally come down, doesn't it? That's a good point, actually. Yeah, thank you for that, Jonty. Save me on that point. But I've not got a lot to say about Red Bull because, we didn't see a lot of Verstappen. We saw Perez in the battle with Leclerc, but then once he got second, that was kind of that. He wasn't realistically going to catch his teammate. Apart from the rear locking on downshift from Red Bull for Verstappen, nothing dramatic happened for him. I did wonder if F1 might consider a safety car rather than a VSC, and I did think, hang on a minute, is this gonna swing things? But there was no need for a safety car in that situation. Again, we'll get to that in just a moment, but just pretty damn dominant from Red Bull today, and I think probably how it will be for the first couple of races. But I'm feeling positive now, Jonty. You may feel positive because you've said that it's not as dominant as perhaps feared, so we shall see. Pole position as well, and I know Sky said like a million times, but there's a stat, isn't there? Their first 1-2 on a Saturday and 1-2 at the opening race on a Sunday since something like 2012 or 13 or something like. I know they kept saying it, but wasn't really listening.
Yeah, well,
I said it about 30 times.
Well, there are other stats. As long as you follow the right people, lights out are always brilliant.
They are, yeah.
The last person to take the title after winning the first race?
Max Verstappen. No, it can't be Max Verstappen, can it? No, go on then. I love a stat.
Rosberg.
Was it?
Yeah,
it was Rosberg
is the last time the winner of the first race took the title. And spanning the same amount of time, near enough, from 2017 until 2022, whoever topped the timesheets in FP2 won the title.
Oh, Fernando.
Who was that? Yes.
Fernando. You never know. Well, again, wind tunnel time could really work out for him. So we'll get to him in just a second. Just want to say thank you to Shantanu for your super chat as well. Says F1 is back and F1 were post-race waffling with it. Woohoo. I could put more effort into the woohoo there, couldn't I? Sorry, but thank you for your super chat and your support. Massively appreciated. So yeah, sorry, Red Bull fans. I'd love to sit here for another 10 minutes and tell you lots of things that happened, but there you go. Pretty comfortable day at the office.
And also, yeah, you have to read that I'm just trying to be massively optimistic as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just going to be all in a bad mood for 10 months if we write the season off now.
I don't know. It depends how close that midfield gets. We've both always said this on streams, Jonty. It doesn't matter if we said it with Mercedes. We'll have said it if we were doing it with Ferrari. It doesn't matter if one team bogs off with the championship, so long as everything in behind is close. And it looks like, as we move on to Mr. Fernando Alonso, we've got quite a battle in behind because Aston Martin, third place for Alonso, which means Sean got his Alonso prediction right. So, yeah. And second place in the Constructors for Aston Martin because Lance Stroll managed sixth place. I mean, what? First of all, kind of surprised, but also not, because it's what Alonso does. You give him a car that has an outside chance of a podium, he's probably going to get you a podium if things go his way. And it was just an absolutely fantastic drive. I did worry after qualifying yesterday whether we, hyped it up a little bit too much and others had, and Aston would actually fall away. And to be fair as well, early race, their pace wasn't anything... Well, not special, because it is special when you think where they were at the beginning of last year and the end of last year. It's very special, but it wasn't the pace we kind of were expecting. And then all of a sudden, especially in that second half of the first stint, whether there was some tyre management going on, I don't know, Fernando, his pace just picked up, Stroll's pace picked up, and all of a sudden it's Aston versus Mercedes for that final podium spot, and he goes and does it with a fantastic battle with Lewis Hamilton. God, have I missed that. I know we had a little taste of it in Hungary a couple of years ago, but what a battle. And I've written it out. I was like, what a move. To the outside of Hamilton at turn 9, had a little look, thought, well, better not, then tucked him really nicely and up the inside of turn 10, which isn't an easy move to make without locking up and heading into the runoff. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Then closes up on Carlos Sainz by lap 44 to give this battle for a podium. And I think, this is going to be a close fight. And he kind of just made his way through. They were close to contact, or there was contact at turn 4 between Alonso, we're talking about, aren't we, and Carlos Sainz, but he got the move done up the inside of turn 11 in a fantastic scrap. And I think, we've talked about GP2 engine a lot, but can we let that one go, and can we just take this one as a quote from now on? Yes, bye-bye. So Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, that was classic Nando. I think there's one big key to that car, regardless of where the pace may be in the pecking order. It looks like it's perfectly balanced. I think that's the biggest thing for him. He can just drive it however he likes. When we saw him trying to make the moves, there was plenty of times when he was kicking the back end out, lots of little squirrely moments, and he was just able to drive through it without worry. It was what I assume every driver wants, where it's going to do what you want it to do. And if you put the throttle on too early and step the back out, you can control it. I mean, look at I think was it the move into turn 1 or turn 4 where he had a full-on massive drift moment. Yeah, it was a huge drift, and he just held it as if it was nothing. It was absolutely fantastic, and that is what is going to give us the excitement this year. Even if it doesn't keep up the pace and ends up fighting a couple of places down, he's going to be properly fighting instead of scrabbling, just trying to defend. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, he himself, didn't he? He said on the radio as well, lovely car to drive. I mean, I saw in chat before we went live, Fernando is positive, and somebody said, that positivity will last until the first bad result. But that's not just a Fernando Alonso thing. That's a top driver. They want the best results all the time, and as soon as they get bad results, of course they're going to complain. But I mean, absolutely fantastic drive. Like you said, that snap as he went for the outside of Lewis Hamilton, wasn't it? Outside, and Lewis sort of took under. That could have been sort of round like Sebastian Vettel a few years ago in that corner, and that would have been probably game over for a podium. So absolutely fantastic drive from Fernando, and the Aston looks really good. And I think at the moment, for the first few races, I'd sort of say Red Bull out front on their own. Ferrari clearly, and we'll get to them in just a second, having some deg issues still, as we saw in testing. So then you've got this Aston Martin Mercedes fight, and I think, fine, Red Bull, go win the championships, that's fine. But if we can have a Ferrari, Aston, and Mercedes scrapping those sort of second, third, and fourth place in the standings, that's going to be an incredible season to enjoy. But amazing stuff. And on the subject of amazing stuff, Lance Stroll somehow turns up to this race weekend, gets in the car, leaves us all absolutely terrified after practice, with him sort of resting his wrists and things and clenching his fist, thinking, oh, can he do this? Gets in the car. Not only does he manage to finish the race, but he manages to be in the fight with George Russell for a good chunk of it and brings it home in 6th place. I think that's, for a driver that's going to be in absolute agony. I watched him during the what's it called? The national anthem, and you could just see it. He just pulled a couple of faces when he moved his wrist, and I thought, oh, is he going to do a full race here? And I think he did a fantastic job. I know that on Twitter, Jonty, you've been a little bit sort of, oh, should he be racing really? And a lot of people have, to be fair, not just you. A lot of people concerned about whether he should be racing, but I think he did a great job. The only negative, if you want to put it on that, for Aston Martin is that the two did have a little bit of contact at turn 4, although Martin Brundle made the point that Alonso was sort of slowing to cut back under, and maybe that's caught Stroll out a little bit, and Stroll's gone in a bit hot, and you put the two together and it's kind of one of those first lap things. But it's the sort of first lap thing, if you're going to have it, you want to have with a different car and not your teammate. But were you impressed with Lance overall today?
He did an amazing job. No one can deny that. To cope with that pain and still be on pace, he's done an incredible thing. That's probably the drive of his career. I will openly state, personally, I still don't think he should have been in the car. Because, thankfully for him, it was a clean race. Pretty much. If there'd been some first lap shenanigans, it really could have made his injury 10 times worse through no fault of his own. So it's great that nothing like that happened. And now he's got another 2 weeks to get as close to fully fit as he can and not have to worry about it.
an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think I said at testing that maybe it's not worth the risk. 23 race season. Does he really need to be in that car taking that risk? But if the car is that good, he's gonna want to be in there, isn't he? Right from the start and pick up as many points as possible. So I totally understand why people thought maybe sit the first couple out, Lance. Make sure you don't do anything, sort of do any more damage. A broken toe as well, of course. But I think he did a fantastic job. Yes, that incident at turn 4 was a bit hairy, but the more you look at it, the more you look at it, the more you think, yes, Alonso's a bit slow trying to tuck back under. Lance is going in a bit hot trying to make a move. You put those two together, it was only going to go one way, wasn't it? So quite amazing, really, that nobody came off with any worse damage in that situation. And I wouldn't want to have been either driver if that ended both of their races in front of Lawrence Stroll. Whether it's your dad or not, you're in trouble. That would have been unreal. But I think Lance did a fantastic job today, and it's great for Aston. Some really hefty points. I mean, what's their total now? It's 23 points already this season. I don't know. I mean, I can't remember what their tally was for the end of last season, but it's they're not a million miles away from that already, are they? So I hope they can sustain this, Jonty. That's what I want to see. I want to see this over the course of the season, and I suppose they are the team really in that front battle with all that wind tunnel time we keep talking about that could, in theory, just keep getting better. Or we can hope they can keep getting better. 55 points in the end last year. It's nearly halfway to that already.
Yeah, to think that they could have more points than their entire last year tally by Australia.
Amazing turnaround.
It's absolutely incredible. And yeah, let's just hope it keeps up. I've got a feeling the next two tracks will be a little different because Jeddah and, with the changes, Australia are very high speed. So I've got a feeling it might swing more towards the Ferrari, presuming they don't break. Oh no, I'm super excited about this fight for second now.
Yeah, it's going to be good. And then somebody in chat just said there, I've lost you now. Black emergency. Alonso hype train is real. A lot of us were wondering, weren't we? And thank you to AC as well, member for 26 months. Says, watch out, 4 positions, 3 to 7 every race. That's where the excitement for this year. Go Alonso and Aston Martin, poor from Ferrari and Mercedes. McLaren should be shunted to GP2. Says AC, thank you very much for your continued support, mate. Massively appreciated. And Red Raven says, just a quick warning. You already jinxed Aston Martin Racing Point a few years ago with coming third in the championship. Please no repetitions. Thank you. Hey, they would have been third if it wasn't for that damn points deduction.
Yeah, they would.
I'm sorry. I'm just looking at the chat like I'm so sorry. I ruined it for Racing Point fans. Anything you want to add on Aston Martin, Jonty? We'll do like Q&A and stuff in the chat a little bit later, but we'll try and get through the order first. But if you've got anything that I've missed that you really want to go into, feel free.
No, I don't think there's anything else to add. I mean, they handled everything pretty well. Their stops were smooth. Not the fastest, but they certainly weren't any slouches. They've definitely improved on that front as well, which is another massive factor.
And again, that fight between Hamilton and Alonso. Oh, more of that, please. More of that, please.
Yeah. If we get that all year, I'd be very happy. But I really, really want Alonso and Verstappen to be fighting.
That would be fun.
That will be bitchy as hell, and I will be here for it.
Actually, just on bitchy as hell, actually, Crofty said something. I think it was Crofty. Or somebody in commentary said that there's no love lost between Hamilton and Alonso, and they don't really like each other because of what happened in 2007. And I nearly tweeted them just to say, guys, it's 2023. Come a long way since 2007. I think there's mad respect there now. And I think they've probably moved on from that, and maybe you ought to too. Just a thought. And I know F1 fans and commentators don't like to move on too quickly, but I think, 2007 to 2023, let it go. I don't think there's that much dislike there anymore.
If that was true, then Lewis wouldn't have joined in with his donuts in 2018.
Free says they were hugging in the post-race interviews as well. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They've had their moments, of course, but it's Hamilton versus Alonso and Verstappen versus Hamilton and all these rivalries, they're going to have years where they don't get on, but that doesn't mean that, I can't bother to the maths, however many years down the road it is, that they've not kind of grown up a little bit and moved on. A lot's happened since 2007 was my point. A lot happened at Ferrari today, not all of it good. Which is a great surprise, to be honest. Oh, dearie me, Ferrari. Really solid yesterday. I think it seemed like they'd made a good shout with Leclerc by leaving him sort of not to do that lap and keep the soft tyres. But with the tyres hanging on quite nicely today, it didn't really work out that way, did it? So maybe could have gone for that lap, but then he felt the pace wasn't there to take that pole position anyway, although Sainz was on a half-decent lap up to that point, so maybe Leclerc could have done a bit more. But P4 for Carlos Sainz. I've not got a lot to say, really, about Carlos until sort of late on. I've already been over it with Alonso getting through, but they did double stack at the first stop, which was a smart call, and that worked out, and then things sort of went quiet for both Ferraris for a while. Leclerc plodding along quite happily in third place after losing out to Perez, and Sainz was plodding along quite happily in fourth place. It looked like they were just sort of calming things down, take the points and come back fighting in Saudi and later in the season as the car develops, but it just all sort of fell apart from there. Sainz was struggling with degradation, or at least grip. Says if I push, I may not make it to the end, which was the battle with Alonso. So like I said at the start, maybe those theories about the Ferrari degradation were true from testing. We'll find out over time. And then wanted to know a little bit later in the race why he was bouncing so much. The one thing I threw at you as well, Jonty, in DMs on Twitter was again, with the benefit of hindsight, could Ferrari, if they were struggling with deg, maybe just take an advantage of Leclerc's VSC? We'll get to him in a minute, and bring Sainz in. And yes, they lose track position, but as I said to you, they would have lost track position anyway, so at least give him a fighting chance to potentially come back through. But, fourth place isn't bad if you're struggling with tyre deg, is it? With now looking at the result, I mean.
Yeah, it definitely would have been a worthwhile call to come in, get some softs. Then he's got the time and the chance to make it up on track. You've got the possibility that at least one of the Mercedes cars may have pitted to try and cover it.
Yeah.
And he's got the chance of getting a fastest lap, which is another extra point that they wouldn't have had. And he certainly would have got on brand new softs. Well, nearly new. I do think that the deg, worries are the factor. There's no reason he would have said, if I keep pushing, I won't get to the end. And it definitely looks to be rear limited. Once those tyres started to go, he could not get out of the corners.
It's interesting because Alonso said after testing that he thought they were quicker on race pace than Ferrari, and I wasn't so sure. But then if you factor in every part of a race, which includes degradation, then he was right, wasn't he? And that's how it played out. But it's a tricky one because they got fourth place, which probably may have ended up being where they would have become the checkered flag anyway, even if they had pitted on the virtual safety car. So maybe not worth the gamble. But just sometimes I think in that situation, your driver's not happy with the tyres, get them in, try something new, mix it up. But bank some points early on, I suppose, is what they were thinking, more importantly. But just to confirm, Purple Zebra, by the way, hello, says that was Brundle who said that about Hamilton and Alonso, and Crofty made the same point about respect between them. So thank you very much, just to clarify that one. But the other side of Ferrari, pre-race it all was going wrong, wasn't it, really?
Well, DJ Red Raven just made me laugh with his comments. We've increased our engine power by about 30 horsepower. Immediately explodes. Like, yeah, that's Ferrari for the last, 17 years?
That's 2 decades. Well, here's the thing. So, on the grid, they had to change batteries, didn't they? Because they had issues anyway. I've not seen... if anyone in chat knows, let me know. I've not seen 100% confirm what they changed, whether it was just batteries or whether it was control electronics or anything like that.
It was energy store and control electronics.
So they've already used one of their two of both of them at the first race. And then Charles Leclerc grinds to a halt. After looking good for P3, pretty solid P3, grinds to a halt after turn 13 with an engine problem confirmed from the team. So they've already got... Well, they said they'd need to use 4 units this year. I'd argue probably looking at 5 now for some of those components, because that is just an unbelievable. And it's he won here last year, But Charles Leclerc, mechanical problems and Bahrain, it just seems to be a thing at Ferrari, doesn't it? Or it feels that way. 2019 happened, of course.
It's just... I feel so sorry for Ferrari and McLaren. I know we'll get to them, fans, because they keep getting given so much promise. And things even look like they're going to be better, and then you have to put up with this. And it's like, oh... How do you keep going through that? I mean, I just said, get it, I'm going to go and support Williams because I know they'll always be last. And then they go and get a point. It's so disappointing from Ferrari. We know they are better than this. And there's no reason they can be screwing up in this way, making strategy mistakes or not taking the opportunity to make a proactive strategy call to try and get more. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've got to stop saying
that. Thank you to Chevron McBean says, so we can all come to the conclusion that the Formula 1 Championship is all wrapped up to Red Bull and Max, but the Formula 1.5 Championship will be legendary with Alonso in the mix. You know what I'm going to say, Chevron. You've been here a while. It's far too early in the season to be writing the championship off already. You never know, and all of that. But it's looking, Red Bull looks strong. Thank you to Rixis as well for your super chat. Says, I'd love to have you two back. With all due respect to other co-hosts, but this is the best here. That's how it's spelt. Grab some beer. This race is a lovely prospect for the rest of the season. Thank you so much to both of you for your super chats and your support. Always appreciated. I don't know what to say about Ferrari, mate. I really don't.
Well, that's a fair comment. Why do you think Italian wine is as good as it is? It's needed.
It's fair. It's fair. I was hoping that Ferrari were going to be the ones to take it to Red Bull. The pace is clearly better than it was, or the experts were talking about after testing, isn't it, at Ferrari? So that's a positive. But I've said this so many times. You can have all the pace you want in that car, but it's pointless if you can't get to the end of the race. So, yeah, I hope that is a blip and it's not the return of what we saw last year and they have to turn the engine down and that just opens the door even more for Red Bull and we don't have a fight. Or if we don't have a fight between teams, at least Checo can take the fight to Verstappen. Hear the skepticism in my voice, but I've got nothing to add. I mean, I'll read the notes if you want. I mean, past Perez at the start, squeezed him, close to contact, right front lock-up, turn 1, lap 5. I did sort of, as I always do, wrote down when they said plan A, which was lap 9. They stayed on plan A, so that's a positive. I always write it down because it's quite funny looking at the list of, lap 9, plan A, lap 15, plan B, and then by about lap 25, they're on plan Z. I quite like doing that with Ferrari. Degradation was lower than expected on the hard tyre, is what Leclerc was told, so that's good. That's a good sign for them. And then he grinds to a halt after the exit of turn 13 on lap 41. DNF, virtual safety car, and then obviously about the changing batteries on the grid. So the onboard, the engine just cut out, didn't it? Martin Brundle did suggest maybe an electrical problem, but the team did say it was something to do with the engine, so that's what we have at the moment. But not a great start for Leclerc, not a great start for Ferrari, and they're going to need to make that ground up, and it's... What I would say, okay, so if you are somebody who is quite neutral and you want to watch a championship fight and that's why you're here, I would say this, that Max Verstappen retired from the first race of last year and was a long way off Charles Leclerc coming about the third race and turned it around to win the title. I'm not saying Leclerc will do that, but my point is you never know what can happen.
Yeah, and I think Leclerc is the reason that Ferrari have really got to turn this around because at this rate, especially how the last couple of years have gone, if they don't start providing, he's going to look elsewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I've long thought that Leclerc is a Ferrari lifer. He's going to do pretty much his whole career there. But now I'm not so sure. Because there's been so many times he's been out for wins and it's been taken away from him. And he's still young. He's still got his whole career ahead of him. How do you keep going with that? I wouldn't. And the problem Ferrari have got with that is that any other team that offered him a seat, if he announced that he was looking, every team is after him.
Yeah. He's
not casting any shade against anyone else, but if you're Red Bull, you take him over Checo. If you're Mercedes, you take him over Russell.
Oh, I don't know if you take him over Russell. That's a bold call. No, I love you, Jonty. You always throw a hand grenade into my mind and I go, But no, but I was just going to say about Norris. It's a similar story with Norris. Now, Leclerc's a little bit older, so maybe he can't afford, Norris can afford to give McLaren a couple of years, can't he? And he's got the contract anyway. But Leclerc's probably thinking, look, I can give you this year and I can see out my contract next year. But if this keeps happening, like you say, how long does he stick around? It's going to be, driving market will be great anyway as we hurtle towards there. But somebody actually pointed out, random Bosman, about Hamilton retiring. Maybe Leclerc's, I think Toto Wolff's actually suggested similar, or the rumour has been that Leclerc could be the one to replace Hamilton if and when he retires. I mean, he will retire eventually, but if and when he retires. So maybe there's something there, but that's something for another day, I think. And I just hope this isn't the start of another one of those years for Ferrari, but then I feel like I've been saying that every year since about 2008, to be honest. It's what it feels like at the moment. Mercedes, we'll move on to them. Of course, we'll take your comments and questions as always. It's a reaction, not a review. So if you've got anything that we've missed and you want us to talk about, we can do that a little bit later on. Lewis Hamilton, P5 for Mercedes, P7 for Russell. Toto Wolff described it as one of the worst days he's had in racing. I was quite surprised at that because I don't think Mercedes were too bad today compared to what we were expecting coming into this weekend. I thought they were in big trouble, and 5th place and 7th place, I don't think, and it seems crazy given where they were a couple of years ago, winning Constructors' title number 8, but I don't think that's a bad result for Mercedes given where they are. What is quite bad is that after qualifying, they're already saying this car has gone as far as we can take it. It's not the concept that we need. We need to move on. So that's the biggest surprise from me today. But just in terms of the race itself, let me find them on my list. So Lewis Hamilton started in P7, ended up P5, got a couple of places. I'll say it again, fantastic scrap with Fernando Alonso, and more of that please, lads. Definitely pitted end of lap 30 to avoid the Alonso undercut. Did want to stay out and did avoid the Alonso undercut, but Alonso then tried the overcut, didn't quite work, but he did come out just behind him, and eventually we got that great battle. So 5th place for Hamilton today. I think he felt that was, if I caught the interview right at the end, pretty much as good as they could have expected to say today. And George Russell, left front lock up at turn 10, and that put him into the runoff area, but that was about as dramatic as it got for him. Did ask at one point if Hamilton was slow or managing, and was told that Hamilton was struggling, which is interesting. Did have a slightly slow first pit stop, apparently, but at his second stop, he came out just ahead of Lance Stroll, who had tried the undercut, and then they had a really nice fight as Stroll got past at turn 4. So it was very much Aston Martin versus Mercedes for that for that 3rd place, wasn't it, in the top 3 teams, and that was really quite enjoyable. I'm not sure, you talk about the concepts and we talk about Toto Wolff saying worst day in racing, but probably doesn't improve the mood that they were beaten by a customer team today, who have gone the right way with their concept, clearly.
Yeah. There's an old adage that I've heard of from poker, which is called a sucker rule. And it says that if you can't tell who the sucker at the table is, it's you. It feels like Mercedes are doing that with their design concept. It's like, if you can't tell who's got their design concept wrong across the field, it's you. They need to stop with all of this maybe, ifs and buts, and we're not sure what, blah, 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 blah. They're the only people who've gone with this kind of design, and they're the only one that have had trouble getting it to work. Yes, they're quite far up the field, but you know what I mean? If they're going to keep umming and ahhing over it,
yeah,
just do it. Stop wasting time and wasting money, because the longer that you wait and say, well, we're going to try to make it work and we're not sure that it's the zero pods, that's more and more races that you're losing points at and costing them money and costing them constructors' places.
It feels crazy to say this. I don't think Mercedes will write off an entire season. I don't think they'll go that far, but I wouldn't be surprised now if, they've got this update coming in Imola, which is apparently is going to be worth about 0.3, apparently, which is going to do
Nothing.
something for them, but it's not, if everyone else improves by 0.3, it does nothing, does it? So it needed to be a much bigger update. So if they've got this coming in Imola, I just wonder if that doesn't sort of improve things enough. Maybe they do just say, right, well, we're going to put most focus on next year. We'll still bring stuff for this year and we'll still work on this car and try and pick up the odd win and some podiums and some points and try and get top 3 in the constructors again or something. But look at 2024 and put that as the main focus, because I'll say it now, I'll go on record as saying it now. If, and again, for anybody who chooses to miss the point, I'm not saying they will write off the season, but if they effectively did, they would be one hell of a force in 2024 when you consider that Red Bull would be fighting for the championship and have got this penalty ticket to sort of deal with the reduced wind tunnel time. They could be a serious force in 24, and that could be their route back to the front if they go with a whole new concept. But then you've got, as Ted Kravitz was saying just before I went live, you've got Lewis Hamilton saying we've got the cost cap, we can't afford to bring a plan B car. But then you've got Toto Wolff tasking the team with doing exactly that and bringing a plan B car. So we shall see what happens, I suppose, over the next few weeks and months. But it's baffling they're in this position. It's also quite baffling to me that they knew this car wasn't where they wanted it to be last season, and then after the first qualifying session of this season, they say, yeah, this car still isn't where we want it to be. And you think, should that decision not have been taken last year? Again, easy with hindsight, but I don't know. I'll say it again. They won 8 consecutive Constructors' Championships. They've got some very bright people there. I'm sure they'll find their way out of it. But if you're a Mercedes fan, I don't think it'll be a bad season, but it might be quite a frustrating one at times, I think is what I'd say on that one. But anything on Mercedes race, Jonty? We've kind of covered it with Alonso, haven't we? And the Aston Martin, that really nice battle they had. But maybe something on Russell. He's a little bit 7th. He wasn't sure that was the best that could have been done today. He didn't seem overly happy in his interview. 1.3 seconds off Stroll come the end.
Yeah, there was something odd at the end, towards the end we saw between Russell and Stroll. It was weird on the timing tower when Stroll went wide in turn 10. Russell jumped ahead and then was suddenly 2.2 behind on the timing tower, which I didn't know what was going on there. I've got a feeling Mercedes actually jumped a bit too early on the stops. When you look at the pace that Alonso had and Stroll, I think they just went a little bit early. That could well be because they were suffering with degradation, but they need to look at the long game a bit more.
Yeah. Hamilton did want to pit, did he? When he was asked to come in. But they had to come from Alonso. I don't know. Just a Ferrari and Mercedes, bit of a mess, but I'd argue Mercedes actually a better day today than Ferrari. Probably in terms of pace and what we saw, I think it was better for them than many were expecting. That's a good point from Rapide as well in chat. Says Toto told Sky Germany that they've reached all the goals they set for the winter. So they came in with this car, they've hit the goals that they wanted for the winter, and they are where they are now. And you think, what were those goals? Well, I don't want to talk about goals too much, to be honest. Certainly not that word. Apparently Liverpool have had quite a few goals today, but let's not get into that one too much. Let's roll on from the top 3 teams then, because unbelievably, we're nearly 50 minutes into the stream, Jonty. When we get chatting, mate, we do talk. We won't be not quite as long as the testing streams. Don't worry, everybody. One of my Max Verstappen and Fernando Alonso predictions came true. Another prediction that came true is a top 8 finish for Valtteri Bottas. What a drive. Really decent drive from Bottas again. One of those races where he kind of... I sound really disrespectful when I say it, but you'll know what I mean. Kind of went about his business quite quietly, made any moves he had to make, strategy was bang on, looked after the car, looked after the tyres, and is rewarded with probably... the best he could have got today. In fact, absolutely certainly the best he could have got today was 16 seconds behind Russell. So probably would have been P9 with Leclerc. Not if Leclerc had finished, sorry, but still, P8. Really great result from Bottas. And Zhou Guan Yu, Jonty, I don't know if you know, fastest lap of the race right at the end. No points for it, but hey, that's a mark for him, isn't it? It's something.
Yeah, I did find myself wondering about all of the last 3 points winners, thinking, how did you get there? Especially compared to where people had started. It was very, very bizarre. I I still don't know what happened to Magnussen in qualifying, but Hulk did well, and then in the race just vanished. The Williams came up. You got Bottas coming up. Gasly fought well, despite being last. It's like, it was very, very surprising. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see all that much of it because there was so much battling happening a little bit further up. It does bode well for the rest of the year, though, because there's no one apart from McLaren who seems to be way adrift.
Yeah.
We've got Red Bull, and then 3 together, then 5 together, and then McLaren.
It's on my notes because I was gonna put this theory forward. I've not checked the press release in a moment, but I'm going to give the shout out to Sandro and to Otso as well, who say that Zhou pitted for fastest lap to take it away from Gasly. Nesty then says smart move from Alfa Romeo. I don't know if that's been confirmed by the team, but actually, I'll have a look at the press release in a minute. But just as a theory, it makes complete sense. If this midfield is going to be as tight as we all think it's going to be, and as it looked today, that's a point they've taken away from a potential rival in Alpine. We could look back at Abu Dhabi and after Abu Dhabi and say, nice one, well done, Zhou. Great decision from Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, that was genius. That makes a lot of sense to me. I hadn't heard that, but that makes complete sense.
I think so. I think, again, like, really tight fight. It also keeps them ahead of them at the moment, so it would have done anyway, I think. But yeah, it's a smart move.
We've seen positions decided on much less than 1 point.
I'm trying to think what you mean now.
We've seen titles decided.
Oh yeah,
of
course. Yeah,
point.
sorry. Come on, Sean. Remember Murray. He's in my head somewhere. Yeah, no, I think great stuff from Alfa. I've not got a huge number of notes on them because it was one of those days where, a lot of the focus was on, and I think rightly so, the Aston, Mercedes, Ferrari fight. But just a good day for Alfa Romeo. I can't really say much about 4 points on the board, nice and early on. A fastest lap. It's not a point, but it's, like I say, it's a little mini trophy for Zhou. And I've got a feeling he has a fastest lap, doesn't he? Is that his second one in F1?
Yes.
Maybe he's the fastest lap guy.
And it does add a little bit more weight to the Ferrari power unit claims because the Alfa was pretty rapid in a straight line.
I'm just going to add to our point, Jonty. Sandro, again, says Alfa Romeo finished equal with Aston on points last season, so they're aware these things can matter. I like you, Sandro. I like you all. I love you all. You're brilliant. But Sandro, you're good. I might just start nicking your points and not giving you shout-outs, then I'll sound like a genius.
Now,
good stuff.
Now, do we wonder whether that's a sort of a smarter, more forward-looking, more forward-thinking attitude that's been brought in by Seidel?
Possibly. Sorry, Wayne. I didn't see your super chat, mate. I didn't get a notification for it. I've just found it on Streamlabs. Thank you very much, mate. It says, do you think Merck are missing Aldo Costa? I think that they are really missing him. Thank you so much for your super chat, mate, and for your support. I'll let you go for that one, Jonty, because I'm just trying to think.
That's a hell of a good call. I think he spurred other people in chat to talk about talent bleed, which is the same thing. And yeah, we've seen a lot of people departing from this department, that department, probably loads behind the scenes that we don't actually know about who've been offered something better from Red Bull, Ferrari, whoever. Oh, yeah. But him specifically, they really are missing. Absolutely. Very good call.
It's a good shout. Chat are always good, but they're on it tonight. Yeah, good stuff from Alfa. We'll say that again. Like the third time I said it, but I'm going to say it again. In fact, fourth time. Good stuff from Alfa. Alpine is my next one on the list. Pierre Gasly specifically. We'll talk about him first because somebody didn't have a great day. But Pierre Gasly did have a fantastic day. Started P20. Started on the soft tyres, which surprised me actually from 20th. I thought he might have gone with a Magnussen on the hard tyre, but we'll get to him later. But that doesn't really work out. Did get a late stop under the virtual safety car, I think I caught in commentary. I didn't see it happen. But he was another one, just quietly went about his business, made moves when he needed to. Strategy was bang on from Alpine, and he went from P20 to P9 by the end of lap 43 and hung on in there very nicely. 16 seconds clear of Albon, only a second off Bottas, 1.1 seconds off Bottas to take a couple of points. And I'm, great drive, but I'm not totally surprised because it's not, we've seen Pierre Gasly come from well down the order before and pull out great results. It's probably not a great shock, but given the pace that Alpine appeared to have at times, maybe it is slightly surprising. I don't know, but great drive from Pierre. And I know that Fernando was always going to get driver of the day today, but I'm quite surprised Pierre didn't in some ways because I think that was a superb drive. Certainly better than his teammate.
Yeah, Pierre had a great day. Didn't really seem to get in many scrapes or have risk of contact all that much. He just took the easy moves when they were there. The strategy worked beautifully. He really just avoided all the drama and went, oh, thanks very much, 2 points, cheers. I'm kind of a bit gutted that Joe took that fastest lap off him. That's a hell of a debut for his first time ever racing outside the Red Bull stable.
Yeah, I think, it is, isn't it? Yeah, sorry. I kept seeing... I saw Gasly on the timing screens. I remember it just reminded me, but then I saw Tsunoda all over Albon, and I thought, "Oh, double points for AlphaTauri." And then I had to take a minute to remind myself, no, it would just be 1 point for AlphaTauri. Thank you, Pascal, who is an Alpha fan. Thank you very much for your super chat. Says hi, Sean and Jonty. I am very happy with 4 points for Alfa Romeo Sauber and the fastest lap to take a 1 point off Alpine. A decent start to the season could be vital at the end of the year. Thank you so much, Pascal, for your support. Yeah, I've got nothing else to say now. We've made the points, but also you've absolutely reiterated that there, Pascal. So hopefully a good season for them. Great drive from Bottas, great drive from Gasly. I feel bad not talking more about Gasly's drive, actually, but we didn't see a huge amount of it, which, isn't totally surprising. But Esteban Ocon. Oh, no, go on. Go on.
I was going to say, we did see lots of Esteban Ocon's
pit stops.
What happened to him, at least. We may not have seen his car, but we saw his name appear at the top of the screen enough times.
Yeah, in the nice little new penalty graphic. Quite like it, actually.
It's kind of weird to have, over at Aston Martin, you've got Stroll arguably having the race of his career. And then at the other end, you've got Ocon probably having the worst race of his career.
Well, wing was broken early on, left front end plate, which he didn't get a black and orange flag for, which I'm sure Gunther Steiner is going to be thrilled about. 5 second penalty for being out of position on the grid, looked to be too far forward. They then brought him in and thought, well, we'll serve our penalty now. Makes sense, get out of the way and change the front wing, do it all as one. Unfortunately, it looked like somebody had undone the fastenings on the wing before the penalty had been served. That then meant he got a 10-second penalty for failing to serve that first penalty correctly. And then, because that wasn't enough, when he came in to serve that penalty, he sped in the pit lane and then got a 5-second penalty for pit lane speeding. Eventually, Boxton retired, which I don't blame him. Did say something interesting over the radio. Said, I've been doing this throughout my career, did it in testing and practice, all my time in Formula One, and it's never been a penalty. Why now? I'm not quite sure what he's referring to, so I'd like to kind of read press releases and see what it means, because pit lane speeding, not serving your penalty, and being out of position on the grid is always a penalty. So I'm not quite sure what racing series Ocon's been in all these years.
Yeah.
A bit of a weird. I think he's probably, what I would assume, Jonty, to give him the benefit of the doubt, probably miscommunicated what's happened from this, or the team have miscommunicated to him what the penalties were for, because that radio message makes no sense otherwise.
Yeah, that was a bit of a weird one. It's like, you haven't been doing these things. You know full well that you can't do them. I mean, he probably couldn't see that he was misaligned in his pit box. But he still has to accept that, oh, yeah, maybe it was that.
All very weird. It's just a really scruffy day. Not just from Esteban, to be fair. His team were the ones that decided to not serve his penalty properly. So it wasn't just all him, was it? But just really polar opposite ends, sort of at each end of the garage. You've got Gasly with a great drive, keeping it clean, couple of points from the back of the grid. And then you've got Esteban just kind of testing the penalty system. Do all of them come with points? That's something to look at, Sean. I assume, oh no, because pit lane speeding doesn't, because Gasly hasn't had points for pit lane speeding, has he? So maybe not, but I'll have a look at that in a bit. But just really scruffy from Ocon, really, really scruffy, and from the team. So it's kind of, I feel like it's almost a miracle they've got a couple of points on the board. Are you surprised by the lack of pace? Because I know when we did the testing streams, you set me off because you got me excited thinking they had something up their sleeve. But if they have, it's not, they either haven't bought it yet or it's not quite gone the way that maybe they were hoping.
I don't know what to tell you.
They're not horrendous, by the way.
I don't think I've read a bit too much into the rumour mill and was hoping that they really did have something hidden. All I could do now is hope that they still have that thing hidden and just have taken sandbagging to a ridiculous extreme. Because beyond that, they're not in a good place.
So no penalty points for pit lane speeding. No penalty points for the failure to serve penalty, and no penalty points for the inaccurate start position. And that's good, by the way. I will make the point I made in the video over the winter. I think penalty points should be for dangerous driving, not for being too far forward in your grid box or for running wide 4 times in a race. That's just my view. So I'm glad they didn't come with penalty points, but yeah, not great from Esteban. I've got nothing else to say. I don't want to keep tearing him apart. Philly the Blank says Alpine still look 5th fastest. So that would be Red Bull. You've got Red Bull, Ferrari, Aston, Mercedes. Yeah, see, I put them 5th. I would have thought 5th. But maybe if Gasly starts higher, he's going to be, probably would have been where Bottas is, wouldn't he, you'd have thought?
Yeah, that sounds about right. But I'm still unsure about the Alfa Romeo. That's very quick on some tracks and not others. So it could really swing throughout the year.
And the last team of the top 10, which is really lovely to say, are Williams. Alex Albon, P10. Logan Sargent, P12. Super quickly on Sargent, by the way. In fact, not super quickly, I'll say it. I think he's had a very good debut weekend. Not unlucky not to get out of Q1, but so close to getting out of Q1. Identical time to Lando Norris. 1,000th of a second somewhere, and he gets into Q2 on his qualifying debut, which would be fantastic. And then I think he races well to P12. He's not a million miles away from his teammate. All right, fine, nearly 10 seconds. But for a first, you consider how far Latifi was off his teammate at times last season. That's not bad at all. And Alex Albon drives superbly well. Was really happy after the race. Quite surprised, I think, or a lot of people quite surprised at where that pace has come from. Certainly better than expected after testing. And certainly better than Williams were talking about before the season started. They felt they were really going to struggle, and then they come out, and Alex Albon actually a little bit disappointed after the race, felt like they could have had more, maybe Q3 on Saturday as well. So I'm really excited for Williams this year. I don't think they're going to be challenging for sort of top 5, 6 in the standings, but they've got a great opportunity here for a really solid season and some good points, and it's a point on the board as well right at the start of the year. Great stuff from Williams. I'm so happy, Jonty, when Williams do well. It just feels right. We want to see him do well. The underdog, the ultimate underdog at the minute.
Yeah. That's just me being old. Always love Williams. So seeing them get a point in the first race, that's fantastic. And hopefully they'll keep some development going. Because if what people like Capito have said is to be true, they don't have the money worries anymore. And they've got just about all of the wind tunnel time they could possibly want.
I just read what Alex Albon said, actually. He says, I we're maybe not quite midfield pace, but we're close. And to get a point in the first race is pretty amazing. I'm super happy and super proud of the team. It was a job well done by everyone at Williams. And Dave Robson, who is head of the vehicle performance at Williams, said although scoring a point is always rewarding, there are significantly more positives to take from today. Alex drove expertly, exactly as we know he can, and he was able to gain places and then defend strongly whilst managing his tyres to the end. Logan enjoyed a fantastic opening race, which has taught him a huge amount about racing in Formula One. He didn't make a single mistake, was measured in attack and good with his tyres. So that's a learning curve. It's a steep learning curve, F1. Logan Sargent doing a great job, and he says, I absolutely loved every second of my debut race. The first time going off the line was special. I'm proud of the team. I think we performed everything we expected outperformed everything we expected coming from testing. Congratulations to Alex and everyone at Williams for scoring the first points of the season. Just anything on his race that he wanted to add. Everything went smoothly from the race start to the pit stops, virtual safety car. Can use it as a good base going forward and make progress through the year. So just so lovely to hear Williams speaking so positively for me. And Albon has impressed me last season, impressed me again today, and Sargent's impressed me. What have you made of Logan super quickly, Jonty, in his first F1 weekend?
Yeah, he's done great. I've seen people talking about in the chat, and as you mentioned, 1/1000th of a second from Q2 on his debut quali. Only the whoever did it first rule keeping him out. He's got to be proud of that, and finishing P12, was it?
Yeah, 12th. About 9.5 seconds off his teammate.
That's nothing to be sniffed at. That's a hell of a good debut, especially with what everyone expected to be the very worst car. And as we've seen, looking long term in constructors titles, that 12th could be the difference between a position.
Yeah. And also,
what really excites me with this Williams seemingly being all right, if they can just keep the reliability that they've been known for these last few years, whilst being slow, they've tended to, always get to the end. If they can keep doing that with the odd 10th or 9th, whilst others around them are either finishing a couple of places ahead or DNFing, that could be massive for them. That could easily take them to the 7th over the course of the year.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if that's Logan's sort of baseline, his first start, then he's going to do all right. I'm quite confident. A lot of people thought he was going to be dreadful. And all right, it's only one race. It could all go wrong in Saudi Arabia. We know it can. But, as a starting point, as a baseline, that's really solid. So well done to him and well done to Williams as well. Just super quickly before we roll on to the rest of the field, we'll do Q&A a little bit later and take your comments as well. Please do drop a like on the stream. Over 1,200 of you here and just over 200 likes. So if we can get that bumped up and massively more, that'd be hugely appreciated. Really does make a difference, and actually made a massive difference actually over testing. So thank you so much to everyone for your likes. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new. Lots of content coming this season, and you can support the channel with the super chats and PayPal and Streamlabs and Patreon and all of that stuff. Links in the description down below. Thank you for your super chats so far. I always say it, I will always try and get to the chat, but obviously I have to read out super chats provided they are decent and respectful and not incredibly rude. But I always try and come to the chat, so no pressure on those. So thank you so much for your support in advance and for everybody so far, and for testing. Actually, testing was so much fun, Jonty. We'll get to that in a bit. Who's next? Kevin Magnussen and Haas. Haas, 13th for Magnussen, 15th for Hülkenberg. Bit of a weird race, actually, for Haas, I felt. So Magnussen started on the hard, and it didn't seem to be working out too well because he soon dropped down to last place, and the pace wasn't amazing. And he actually pitted on lap 15 to go from the hard to the hard again. Or I think he went to the hard. I need to check the Pirelli thing. That's what my notes are saying. It might be wrong, but not a great first stint. But he's sort of come through into 13th place quite nicely. But then you've got Nico Hülkenberg, who started up in 10th place, clipped the rear of Ocon, I think it was, certainly an Alpine. Got some front wing damage. That debris flicked off between turns 10 and 11, and I think Haas's words were significant car damage, which affected his pace. Did eventually change his wing, and then got a 5-second penalty for track limits. Ended up 15th finished 16th with track limits and they finished 15th. Joe pitted, didn't he? Yeah, that's right. Finished 15th. Stayed 15th, I believe, despite the track limits penalty, because Norris was so far behind as well. But I just kind of a weird race. They looked good in qualifying. Hulkenberg was one of the surprises of yesterday, and their race pace didn't really match up to that. I know Hulkenberg had his problems with damage and things like that, but don't run into the back of another driver. That's a mistake, isn't it? So I don't know, mate. I just expected a little bit more from them today. I wasn't thinking, fighting for the win or anything, but I thought they'd be a bit more in the mix than they were.
Yeah, I mean, we can tell the car's got pace, or otherwise Hulk wouldn't have got that high in qualifying. As I've already said, I still don't know what happened to K-Mag in qualifying. I assume he must have had bad traffic or just blew his best lap, possibly even track limits, so they were being super strict on that. And then in the race, it just went away. The contact at the start, I think you can safely put down just to Hulk being rusty. I mean, it's 3 years since he was in a full-time race seat?
2019? Yeah, it will be, won't it? Was it 19? Yeah.
Yeah, and whilst he's done a couple of fill-in races and he has kept himself fit and in the sim all the time and what have you, he's still going to have a little bit of rust on there. But yeah, big drop-off in the race pace. Although it could suit them well at Monaco, I guess.
Yeah, I just realised I missed Alpha Tower. We'll get to them in a minute. Sorry. Yeah, I've just seen Dennis saying as well in the chat, Haas struggled with tyre degradation in Bahrain, so that's a factor for the race. But I don't think it had a bad day, really. And I do feel like, although McLaren had their issues, nobody appears to be totally cut adrift at the back in terms of pace, which is a good thing. I just thought we'd get a little bit more from them in the race today, but it didn't really come to anything. So I can't really say a lot more about Haas, to be honest, Haas fans. So apologies. But again, not awful. Certainly we've seen a lot worse from Haas over the years, but yeah. I think that's just a little bit disappointed. I don't know what I expected. I can't really say what I expected. Because, I mean, Magnussen was 15.6 off Sargent and Hulkenberg was 6.3 off De Vries with the penalty, so just behind De Vries. But I just thought, I don't know. I can't explain it. I just expected more, so disappointed.
I mean, maybe starting on Haas with K-Mag, they were just hoping there would be a safety car.
Yeah.
If there's a safety car that happens in the first, 10 laps, he suddenly leapfrogs a hell of a lot of people by being able to stay out.
I suppose it's worth the risk, isn't it, when you're 17th on the grid, to try the hard if everyone else has gone soft. But there's such a delta between the tyres that it was never, unless you got that safety car, it was never going to be the right way to go, was it? So it's worth the gamble. If he's 7th on the grid, you don't take that gamble, do you, at all? But if you're 17th, you may as well. Well, I say that. What did Gasly start on? He was soft, wasn't he?
Yeah, K-Mag was the only one starting on hard.
I don't know why, but I was quite surprised. I obviously not caught the tyre talk earlier in the weekend, which is ironic for me. But I was quite surprised that everybody but one driver started on the soft. So I thought somebody might try the mediums, but apparently teams weren't happy with that on the track. The
mediums were just trash.
Yeah.
I thought that there would have been more use of the mediums, but then after saying that, I saw the reports back about those tyres and they just didn't do anything. They just fell to bits and couldn't keep the pace.
So my photos on stream are going to be out of sync now, so I can only apologise because I've completely forgotten about poor Alpha Tauri. I say poor Alpha Tauri, sort of Haas disappointed me. Alpha Tauri, actually a bit of a better day than I expected today, Jonty. Tsunoda 11th place, just a second off Albon. De Vries down in 14th. In terms of what I've got written down, I did sort of early on the radio, Tsunoda thought he had a tear off in the left side pod. That was an overheating concern. Nothing came of that. Had a really nice little close scrap briefly with his teammate on lap 42, and I think it was Zhou as well, down at sort of turn 1-2. I think it was as Zhou tried to move, I believe. It must have been Zhou. Tried to move on De Vries, and it didn't really come off, and then Tsunoda managed to get them both. But I guess the point I need to make is that a lot of the cars around De Vries pitted under the virtual safety car, didn't they, for some tyres, and Alpha Tauri didn't pit him, so he's left a little bit exposed on strategy, and it kind of fell away from him there. But 14th for him, 11th for Tsunoda. I thought AlphaTauri were coming into this weekend probably second slowest, probably. But then I thought Williams was slowest, so there we go. And that was proven wrong. But I thought they were right down there. So they are, better than expected. And maybe that is what we can come to expect this season, is that midfield and that back of the grid is so close that we don't actually have a slowest team. And it's going to sort of chop and change each weekend. So good from Tsunoda. Disappointed with Nick de Vries, though. I must admit, poor in qualifying yesterday, not great. And then the race, obviously not helped by the strategy, but still not amazing 14th, is it? It's awful. It's really tough to read it.
It's not great, but I've seen a hell of a lot of people who were saying that AlphaTauri were dead last based on testing and practice. And I thought they were at least, second slowest, so they should be really happy with what they got. 11th isn't terrible. It's not a point, but he wasn't far off a point. And de Vries, we didn't see much of them, but every time we did see him, it always seemed like he was on the opposite tyre to everyone around him. He was either on old knackered softs that he can't fight with, or he was on the hards when everyone's on newer softs and he still can't fight. Which is probably something they need to get on. Is that because he can't make the tyres last as longer, just to that lack of F1 experience? I don't know. It would make sense, but it's hard to call.
It's an odd one on AlphaTauri strategy. Just look at the graphic now from Pirelli. So Gasly, Albon, Tsunoda, Sargent, Magnussen and Hulkenberg all pitted under the virtual safety car, and de Vries didn't. His last stop was lap 27, on the hard tyre to the end. So you sort of think, even if you have to double stack, surely take advantage of that. Because I think Tsunoda and de Vries weren't all that far apart on track, so it's not like the virtual safety car would have ended before he got there, unless I'm reading that wrong. But I'm quite surprised, to be honest, that they didn't pull him in. But maybe, in fact, I'll tell you what, hang on a second. I think the press release is in. I can tell you what they said. If they address it, they may not. Let's go to de Vries. He is pretty satisfied with his race today. Obviously, it could have been better, and there is room for improvement, but in terms of performance, our race pace was decent. Given where we started, it was a good day because we could still fight some cars around us. Not pitting under the virtual safety car meant I was driving on the hard compound tyre for the remainder of the race, but ultimately the mileage and experience will help us for the season. Points weren't possible today. Probably not for de Vries. I think Tsunoda had a shout, didn't he? 1.1 seconds off. So I have to have a look ahead to Saudi Arabia, which is a bit quicker. The midfield will look different again, which you've made that point, actually, Jonty. So Tsunoda, race pace better than expected. So they're quite happy. Same time, frustrating to just miss out on the point. The start was a decisive moment as I lost some positions to Williams, and their straight line speed was too strong for us, so we couldn't manage to overtake them. Happy with tyre management. Struggled more than we thought. And as soon as they wanted to push, the tyres began to overheat. So there's an issue there for them. Nothing much else to say. Struggled with high speed performance. Saudi might be difficult. Staying positive, which is the word from the team. I'm trying to see if Jody Eggington has said anything about the virtual safety car. The call to bring Yuki into the virtual safety car for his final stop was a no-brainer. However, we missed out by not pitting Nick at the same time, so the strategy group need to go through their numbers to see why this call appeared a marginal one at the time. So it's a marginal call, but he's also admitted it was a mistake not to pit de Vries. So there you go.
Yeah,
that answers that one.
But I've just remembered, speaking of double stacks, Ferrari.
Yeah, I did say that. It was one thing I gave them praise for today, was a successful double stack.
But not the fact that they just got it right. Both of the stops were lightning fast.
Yeah, it wasn't a Monaco situation.
It was absolutely incredible. I don't think I've seen that from Ferrari for years. So that was an unexpected change. Didn't amount to much, but...
Unless I'm mistaken, Jonty, I'm just having a look at my list. Last and very much least, McLaren, I believe. We've done Red Bull, Aston, Ferrari, Mercedes, Alfa, Alpine, Williams. We eventually got to AlphaTauri, Haas. Yeah, so it's just McLaren. Oh dear, is the phrase I want to use. So, first of all, nothing on the drivers today. I think. I mean, we'll start with Oscar Piastri because he retired first, I suppose, while I'm on this one. So I'll just get the tyre graphic up because it will tell me what I need to know for other things. But Piastri got to about lap 13, I think, before he retired. I can't find my notes. Where's my notes on Piastri, Jonty? This is a disgrace. I definitely wrote. So there we go. Passed Hulkenberg into turn 1 on lap 11. So was sort of racing at that point, was looking, racy and getting involved in scraps. But then lost his gearbox, in quotes, pitted for a steering wheel change on lap 14, and Zach Brown later confirmed it was a suspected electrical issue. I will look for the press release in just a moment. It was a DNF, so nothing on Oscar Piastri, nothing he can do in that situation. And then, as if that's not bad enough, Lando Norris going okay. I mean, not where you'd want to see McLaren, but wasn't having the most horrific time initially. But then pitted at the end of lap 10 to go from the soft to the hard tyre, then had to have his pneumatics topped up with air, not fluid. Don't start, Thomas. Have that topped up, and I think he came in a total of 6 times. I assume all of that was to top up as well as change tyres, but an absolute shocker from McLaren. And I'm going to say it again, I am not putting any blame at the door of the drivers for that one. Such a shame for Piastri as well that he couldn't get a few more laps in than about 11 laps on his debut. I mean, he's not going to learn much if he's only out there for 11 laps at a time, is he?
No, exactly. It's not a great way to start the season. And I know I was down on them earlier. To be fair to him, the car looks quicker than it appears.
Definitely.
But it's an absolute dog to drive. It really is. It's unbalanced. It's snatchy. It doesn't wear the tyres very evenly. They've got a hell of a lot of work to do to get it right. There was more than just bad setup. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think the talk after testing was all very negative, wasn't it? And in terms of pace. So, a bit like a couple of teams we talked about, better than expected in terms of their pace. But to make the point I made about Ferrari, you can have all the pace in the world, but if you can only get Piastri 11 laps and you can only get Norris 10 laps before problems, then it doesn't matter how fast your car is, does it? It's really shocking start for McLaren. Were they pointless last year in Bahrain as well? So it can turn around, and I'm sure they've got some very clever people, but they don't seem overly positive at McLaren, and you can understand why. But I've got nothing else to say other than to kind of to be critical, really, because what can Norris do? I mean, he was 61 seconds off Zhou Guanyu.
Yeah, because
he had to pit 5 or 6 times. He can do nothing from there, and Piastri can't do anything if he's got a car that lets him down. You'll see pictures going up now of McLaren. I've got a couple of Norris on track, and the rest are all of them in the pits because that was it. That's his race.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that Piastri's got a really strong psychological head on his shoulders, because that's got to hurt. Especially when you consider that, he's retiring, only completing, 11, 12 laps in a car that's not easy to drive, not the quickest, not very reliable. And then as he sat there, he sees his seat go to 9th, 2 points. Not just an option that he had, that was his car.
Yeah.
And he passed on it for the promises that Zach Brown gave him. That's really got to sting.
It's the usual caveat, though. It is very early days. It could come good. It did last year for them, but I don't know. Maybe it's a bit of recency bias, but things feel worse than they did a year ago. They were talking about the brakes. It was the issue last year, wasn't it? And they had a fix for that. They had a temporary fix, and then they were working on a permanent fix. And that was all, the pace was there, relatively positive. They needed to work around that, and they did. Whereas now it just feels like, I don't know. Like there's nowhere for them. Well, of course they're going to improve, but you see them bottom of the table again. You think, oh dear. It's kind of gone. Oh dear is an understatement, but I don't know what I'm trying to say. I really don't know what I'm trying to say. It's just a mess at McLaren again. McLaren.
I mean, based on testing, you could argue that they never fixed that brake problem.
Well, there's that. It was like almost a whole other issue, though. They feel like I'm going to liken it to Bethesda trying to patch games with bug fixes. They kind of push the button on a patch, and then they go, awesome, problem solved, and then boom, in the background something else blows up. Oh crap, what have we broken now? It's kind of how they are with their updates on Fallout 76 specifically. So yeah, really.
I mean, the biggest
poor, honestly, from McLaren.
The biggest warning note from McLaren was when we heard them talking about bringing a completely revamped, upgraded car, basically a B-spec car, to Baku during testing. It's like, whoa. We haven't even finished testing and you're talking about a new car? That's really bad. I mean, that's a lot worse than when Mercedes was saying, we have got an alternate concept that we can use later in the year if we want to. That's McLaren just saying, no, it's knackered.
Well, at least Mercedes waited till after qualifying.
Yeah.
At least they got that. I've got nothing. I'm just going to see what people are saying in the chat about McLaren, because I don't know what to say. It's an interesting point about Piastri as well, and maybe some will ask the question of what's the promise from Zach Brown worth. But then Zach Brown wasn't to know this was going to be terrible. But no, I say that. Actually, that's a lie, because pre-season they said that they hadn't hit the targets they wanted to. So they knew coming to this season it was going to be difficult to start with. One of the comments of the day goes to Purple Zebra, which, by the way, isn't a great surprise. It says, the only person who made a better silly season move than Alonso is Ricciardo. As it turns out, yeah, probably. He's probably sat there going, actually, yeah, I think I'll just do this. I'm sure he'd rather be racing, but more than 11 laps, ideally. I suppose I will say just on Oscar Piastri, I think he was disappointed after qualifying. He feels like there could have been more. But again, first race weekend since 2021 for Piastri, actually. So I think he had a solid qualifying session. Not spectacular. There is work to do, especially with the hype he comes in on, which, is partly his fault and partly other people's faults. But it's going to be tough for him up against Lando Norris, but I don't think it was horrific for him in qualifying. Just the race, 100% down to the team. I'm not putting that on the drivers at all. Everett says we've got 2017 McLaren back again. Yeah,
that's what it feels like.
And Kevin N says Ron Dennis at the pub drunk laughing at his old team.
Probably. Although, for all of his ills, he did love McLaren.
Yeah.
He wasn't the nicest of people. Let's put that diplomatically. But he did always put the team first.
Yeah. I respect him. I didn't like him. No great surprise, because I was Michael Schumacher Ferrari fan. But yeah, no, I respect him. But I will say this as well very quickly. Do you have to wonder if Ricciardo was totally the problem at McLaren last year? But and what Lando Norris just dragging that car around to these great results? I'll come to the questions in just a few minutes. Let's super quickly because we've been through the field. So for the first time in 2023, driver of the day.
I'll go to the toilet.
I don't have to go to the toilet. Okay, I'll do it. I'll do it backwards then. I'll say driver of the day. Do you want to give yours super quickly before you go, Jonty?
Alonso. That's easy.
That's easy, yeah. Nice. He was the official one. So Jonty's gone with Alonso. Let me know one surname in the chat and I'll read as many out as I can while Jonty goes for a yellow flag. So Jonty's pick is Alonso. I'm sure he'll give us a reason in a bit, but I think we know the reason. He was pretty damn good. I have a feeling Alonso's going to get a lot of votes in the chat. I was pretty confident Jonty would pick Alonso, and I obviously know we got the official driver of the day. So although I would pick Alonso if I was voting, because everyone else is going that way, I am going to give a nod to Pierre Gasly. Give him a little nod for driver of the day. Also Max Verstappen, because, come on, pretty dominant. And as I've just seen in chat, Lance Stroll driving with his broken wrist. But I'll pick I don't know. Gasly or Verstappen. There you go. I'll have a think. While I go for this, we'll have a look at what you guys are saying in chat. Just if I keep being distracted, by the way, just keep an eye on my phone. I've just missed a call, which is a bit concerning, but we'll see. Dell has gone with Fernando, or Nando actually specifically. KMS Boss says Alonso. Dr. Dredd says Alonso. Leah goes with Gasly. I think that's a fair shout, as well as Alonso. Sandra says Alonso. CPB1 says Alonso, obviously. Red Raven says Stroll. Pierre, driver of the day for Scott. Pete says Gasly. M. Harati says Stroll. Random Bosman says Maldonado. There's always one. No other choice, really, says Freeze. Alonso. Julie says Alonso. Crazy Ninja says Alonso. KMS Boss says Albon is another pick. Yeah, actually, that's a very fair point, actually. Yeah, Albon, very good race for Williams for that point, wasn't it? Dr. Dredd says Stroll. I'm trying to see. Yeah, Johnny says Alonso. FOS, is it Fost Driver, says Gasly. Carola says Alonso. Dennis says Gasly. Larshat says Alonso. 20th to points, Gasly. Abso-blooming-lutely. Mark says Alonso. Chat's just skipped, so I'm probably going to miss some people, so I'm sorry. Natsako says Ocon. Ocon gets collector of the day. He was trying to collect as many penalties as he could before his race came to an end. And I'll take 5 more. Extreme BHP says Charles Tilly broke down, but Alonso really. Scott's put Sargent in there as well as a good shout. Daniel Philpott says Marc Genet. Logan says Van Dorn because absolutely. And Pete says Bottas. I think I read that already, but we'll go there. They are the drivers of the day. Are you back, Jonty?
I am, yes.
Did you want to give a reason for Alonso, or is the reason just, well, duh?
Actually, I want to change.
Oh, I can go back to Alonso.
I want to say Stroll-Alonso. Because I think they were equally good. So there you go. Both the Aston drivers as one.
I think it's very fair to
I know it's cheating, but I don't care.
Just say Aston. Aston's a name as well, isn't it? So there you go. Aston. It's tough because you sort of... I want to say Verstappen because that's my go-to, because you know when a driver is out front, does nothing wrong, absolutely dominates, it's hard not to pick that driver. But when you see the battles and the driving and everything that came with it today, it's hard not to go Alonso, and then Gasly coming through as well. I wish we'd seen more of Gasly. I think that would have felt like an even better pick. But yes, that's the driver of the day done. If you've got any questions or comments or anything we've missed, please do pop them in chat. We'll try and take them from chat. You can do it with Super Chat as well if you would prefer, or if you're interested in that. If not, I'll get as many as I can. Please don't get upset if we don't come to you. But we've been going an hour and a half now, so I think actually not bad to get that wrapped up in an hour and a half. So we'll do a little bit of Q&A and then we'll call it a day. Please don't forget to drop a like as well and subscribe if you're new. Where do we get to? 289 on the likes and just over 1,000 watching. So that would be good. So we'll try, and if you can keep it related to the race weekend generally, that would be ideal. I'll always put those comments first, but just to kind of make myself sound like an absolute hypocrite when I say that, because it is the only question we've had so far. From CBP1 says, if Hamilton retires this year, do you think Norris will go straight to Mercedes? And what do you think about Albon at McLaren to replace Norris? On the Albon thing, I think last year and what we've seen today, you know, he's certainly putting himself in the shop window, isn't he? For almost Gasly-esque in a way, in the sense that he, you know, dropped by Red Bull, all didn't really work out from how he wanted to there. Then ends up in a Williams a couple of years later and starts to perform, and people suddenly going, oh, actually, no, he is a very good driver. So I think Albon's put himself back in the shop window, and he'll be a pick for a lot of teams. In terms of, first of all, I don't think Hamilton will retire this year. I think even if Mercedes, again, don't think they will, but even if they did turn around and say, let's put most focus on 2024, I think that would be enough to tempt Hamilton to stay on, even if the car was an absolute dog this year. That would tempt him to stay on, because that's the promise of better days to come. If the car then is terrible next year, then maybe he'd rethink his position at the end of that season. But I think Hamilton stays. But I suppose Norris is probably right at the top of that shopping list for Mercedes if they do need to replace Hamilton, Jonty. But as you said earlier, Leclerc as a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still going to stick with what I thought of testing. If he gets the 8th, he goes. If he doesn't, he stays.
Yeah.
I think it's all down to that now. How long he can keep doing that, that's anyone's guess.
We said he wants to stay till he's got the 8th, but I completely understand the point that's being made. I'm maybe been a bit silly here and a bit pedantic, but if Mercedes are never in a position to win an 8th, or he doesn't get a seat to win an 8th, he's not going to be racing until he's 150, is he? So he's not going to actually be here till he wins his 8th. But I think I would be very surprised if he doesn't sign a couple of years at Mercedes within the next 6 months, if not much sooner than that. So,
yeah,
just trying to think who else there is to fill that, because it depends on what you're doing with Russell, doesn't it? If Russell is going to be the number one and be the one to sort of effectively replace Hamilton, who then replaces Russell as your second driver? Not that Russell's number 2, but as a second driver. Do you go Leclerc, Norris, or do you look at bringing in a Bottas type figure? It's difficult.
It is difficult. Because the other difficulty is, who would you want to go to, or who would take him at the moment? Really, logically, you have to think anyone would snatch your hand off to have Lewis Hamilton in the team. But how F1 political is that going to get? Because I'm pretty sure Horner wouldn't have him at Red Bull. Just because of the history and the dramas between the teams.
I don't see him at Ferrari either.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't feel like a Ferrari driver. I don't think he would fit there. So Aston, are they going to improve enough to give that option? And if they do improve to give that option, Fernando's not going to go anywhere.
Oh, go on. Jonty, it'll probably never happen because Daddy Stroll owns the team, so Lance ain't going nowhere. But last couple of years of their careers, Alonso versus Hamilton again at Aston. Oh, go on. Go on. If you're listening, Mr. Stroll, Lance is young enough to take a couple of years out and still be able to come back. Also, where's my paycheck? I've missed it. How dare you? My yacht needs a service. Fun fact, Sauber today broke the 1,000 points barrier. Bert Zender mentioned that on Valtteri's team radio after the race. Is it Beat or... I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. That's probably all it is. But thank you, Pascal. Past the 1,000 points barrier for Sauber. CPB actually says Hamilton should consider Aston Martin. So backing you up on that one, Jonty. I did see a question on tyre of the day from Sarko. What was the tyre of the day? Honestly, softs seem to dominate.
Yeah.
I think you'd probably argue that is. Because not just that it was pacey, but it also held up much better than I think, certainly I expected it to do.
Yeah, it definitely held up a lot more than I thought it would. Particularly after what we saw in F2. Their softs were falling to bits. For everyone apart from Porchetta, but whatever.
Oh, what a drive that was.
Everyone was practically falling off the track. They couldn't get power down or get turned in properly after 10 laps, and he does 19 on them. Anyway, that's F2. That's not what we're here for.
No, but still, I mean, what a drive. Yeah, baffling.
I'm sure we'll be talking about him next year.
Oh, bold prediction. Yeah. Yeah, I said it in testing that even if Joe had a really good season, I still think Porsche is the one that will be in that Alpha next year. Nothing against Joe at all. Nothing against him at all. Why were the mediums so toxic, says Nick Surface. I have no idea. Just something I'll have a look at your press releases, but it's just something the teams were really trying to avoid, weren't they, the medium tyre? Because, I mean, Red Bull had saved a lot of teams have saved a fresh set. So is that a surface thing?
Yeah, definitely. They work in a funny window that didn't really suit the temperatures they were getting, along with the abrasiveness of the surface. Like the softs will go that bit more sticky and be able to survive that way. The hards have just got the toughness to last a bit longer. With the mediums being in the middle, if they get that little bit too warm, they'll just start to fall to bits.
Yeah, Scott says Red Bull would have gone soft, soft, soft if they were allowed. Obviously they're not, but I think they would have done.
I think everyone would have done.
The hards weren't bad though. Really,
for a change.
For a change, but they're not the hards, are they? They're not the hards from last year. They're a new compound.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes, these are the new C1s, whereas what were the hards last year is now a C0.
Yes. It all got very confusing in testing. I soon managed to work it out, but yeah, so C1's new, C0 is old.
Well, that would then explain the popularity of and why the soft was so good. Because if you look, the usual, it's not very often that we see the range something other than 234. We'll get the occasional one, like Bahrain was 123. A couple of the shorter or street tracks might have 345, but most of the races are 234, and the medium's always the best, which is what they had as the soft today.
And I think we'll see the zeros at Silverstone. Will be one pick.
Yeah, probably.
They like to eat up tyres there, don't they? Yeah, possibly Spa.
That tends to be the middle.
Yeah. Essentially, from what Pirelli have said, we won't see a lot of the C0. Interesting to see what the new wet's going to be like at Imola, though. Hopefully it can be usable. Because it's still... I don't want to get into the wet weather because we've not had any rain, but just very quickly to finish my point, it really does frustrate me when you have a wet tyre sat there and it's too wet to use it. Or it doesn't work, so it's like, well, what's the point then? See what it ends up being.
That will be interesting.
Dr. Dredd says no benefit from Mercedes dropping Bottas. Pascal says the hard tyres were a good race tyre today. And Alfie Alf says, does the fact that Norris kept up with Hamilton-Alonso battle, albeit a lap down, say anything about the true pace of the McLaren? I may be wrong, as I only have BBC's commentary to go on. It's a good point, actually. You've got to take into account he would have been on another newish set of tyres because he'd been in the pits so many times, and also the fact they were battling. But he was there to unlap himself if he needed to, wasn't he? So that's a good point. That is a good point, but I think as Jonty said, the pace is in the McLaren. It's just whether or not they can unlock it and finish the race.
Yeah, exactly. It's a difficult car to drive.
Sorry, just dealing with something. Yeah.
I'm not sure about the previous one, though. No benefit to Merc dropping Bottas. Well, Russell scored more points than Lewis last year, and there's no real way to compare to the time with Bottas because last year's car was crap. They haven't got a baseline to measure them from.
Bottas was a very good second driver at Mercedes. I was overly harsh on him at times. I've admitted that since. Although he did have some shocking ends to seasons occasionally. Let's not get back into that. But I think Russell was the right shout because they need to start thinking longer term. And also as well, a good point to make, I suppose, is, even if I do say so myself, is you have to remember that he was a Mercedes junior, and was he going to take another year at Williams, and could they afford to then risk someone like a Red Bull coming and picking him up, or a Ferrari or something? He's their junior. They wanted him to be the one to replace Hamilton. They had to kind of make a decision because they won't hang around. Russell might have done another year at Williams, but juniors don't always like to hang about at teams towards the back. If Mercedes say we're not promoting you this year, and then a Red Bull come along, or a Ferrari or somebody else, and then they say, well, we'll promote you. All of a sudden you've lost him, and then you're in a mess.
Yeah. I mean, imagine the scenario that he has to do another year in the Williams, and halfway through last year, he can see the state of the Mercedes, and it's before Checo's re-signed. Imagine that he gets a call from Red Bull. We're not certain about whether we're going to be keeping Checo on for any more years, and we're looking to see other drivers who might be interested in a seat. I think he'd be taking their hand off.
We've got some good drivers, haven't we, on that grid? Just
Too many.
Looking at
Not
it
enough
now.
bloody seats.
I'd even go as far as to argue. I will make the point, actually, first of all, they're in F1, so they're not bad drivers anyway. I don't think we've got a truly bad driver on that grid. I know what chat are going to say. I know what people say in comments afterwards. But it's okay. Sorry, I keep checking things. I had a phone call from my dad that I missed, and that's always bloody terrifying with my parents at the age they are. So I got a bit nervous there, but apparently, and this will also confirm their age, apparently he was faffing with his phone and then called me by mistake. Put your glasses on, Dad, if you're listening. There you go. Or no crisis. I just thought I was going to have to end the stream for a second. Anyway, Russell did well in a difficult car last year. Bottas did well when the car was perfect. I don't think he would have done well last year in a Mercedes, says Raul. The other thing, actually, I'm going to make my point again. I think Russell helped massively by having a difficult Williams to drive for a few years and then getting in the Mercedes. It was a difficult car to drive. So,
well, we were saying, I think we said this during the stream last year that it worked in his favour because he's had those years of dealing with a crap car. He was able to get a lot more out of last year's Merc than Lewis was, because Lewis has had 8 years of having the best car.
Leah says, call from my dad is either a dead relative or a butt dial. No other options, basically. or he rings me to tell my car's ready for its MOT. That's about it from my dad. You think I'd be able to tell that one? Couple more questions then. What have we got in the chat? I'm just trying to see anything specific to the race weekend. And I can't see much because it's an interesting one because it wasn't a bad race. And there was, bits happening, but it wasn't something chaotic, was it? There wasn't an absolute ton of stuff happening, like drama and controversy and weird strategies. A lot, apart from Lando Norris's million-stop strategy, it was very much what I expected from this race. Mostly a two-stopper. I'll just double-check the Pirelli graphic before I commit to that line. But if you remove the virtual safety car, then mostly a two-stopper. Didn't touch the medium tyres. Red Bull won it comfortably. We had a great fight behind. That's kind of what the race was, wasn't it? So it's not... I can understand there not been a huge number of questions about it because there's not really much to question. Although I am looking forward to going back and watching some of the onboards of Hamilton, Verstappen, Hamilton, Alonso, and that kind of thing. It'd be great to see that from some other angles, definitely. What are the tyres in Saudi Arabia, says Scott?
I can't remember.
Do you know, Scott, I am on the Pirelli feed now, so I will tell you. I did actually make a note of this somewhere, and I'll see if I can find it in my tyre talk for the next preview. Spoiler alert, there's a tyre talk for a change. Pirelli tyres, Saudi. Someone's getting chat before I can even get there, aren't they? Then I'm like, what? Oh no, I don't want to order some from Saudi Arabia. Goodness me, do I have to stick F1 at the end of everything? I'm sat here ordering tyres from Saudi Arabia. So it is the C234?
Yeah, I thought it might be.
Because, 123 was Bahrain, 234, and then I think it's 123 for Australia as well. Which is interesting. 4 DRS zones in Australia, by the way.
Yes, including the one that they removed for safety reasons. And they've added it back now that we've got cars that are faster. That makes total sense.
Oh no, 234 for Australia, 234 for Saudi, 234 for Australia, and 123 was obviously Bahrain. So there you go. Yeah, I'm not sure about the 4th DRS zone in Australia. I potentially controversially think if a track needs 4 DRS zones, then perhaps the changes you've made might not have been as positive as you. But again, as we said last year, Jonty, it's difficult to kind of judge it because the only comparison we don't have any comparison for Australia. 2021 Australia, 2019 Australia versus 2022 Australia. You can't compare because of the gap, but also these cars are so drastically different, aren't they? So we couldn't tell last year if it was the changes to the track that improved things or if it was just the cars. So at least this year we'll have a direct comparison, but 4 seems a bit much. Sargent is a sleeper agent. Him and Albon dark horses at least till Baku. I hope so. Tyre Talks is James Allen's talk in the late 90s and early 2000s with ITV. Ted started on that now, hasn't he? He's like, oh yeah, Tyre Talk, I know. Terrible stuff. Frank says that was a good race, mate. I didn't say it was a bad one, did I? If I did, then I apologise. That's not what I meant. I definitely didn't say it was a bad race. Oh, not a good race. Sorry, it was a good race. It absolutely was a good race, Frank. I'm sorry if it wasn't thrilling for you, but we've certainly seen a damn sight worse.
I'd say it was a fairly standard F1 race that we've seen in the last few years.
Yeah.
Nothing overly dramatic, nothing excessively boring.
What was expected? Like I say, what was expected?
Yeah,
it was,
pretty much.
I gave it a 7 because I give it the first race of the season hype. You gave it around a 6, which I would say is good. Anything below a 5 is not good. Anything sort of 5, 6 is good. Great. Unbelievable if you get to number 10.
I'm now more excited for Jeddah than I was, though, because, one, I hate it. It's needlessly dangerous. But the various data analysts that you see on social medias, all of the social medias, it shows that we've got 3 clear differences between those top 3 cars. You know, Red Bull are the best at the moment, but their strength is all in high-speed corners and traction zones out of the corners. They've been absolutely dominating that this weekend, sort of based on qualifying. Ferrari have got the top speed, and Aston Martin have got the braking and slow-speed corners. So when we get to a really high-speed track, it could completely change. I don't think it would end up with Red Bull third. That's not going to happen. But it is going to change things around a bit. And I'm so happy that we've got that massive difference in specific areas. There's no one team that's better in any 2, which is fantastic.
I hope it sets us up for a great season. I really do. I think Red Bull are comfortably the favourites still. But again, look at where we were 12 months ago with Ferrari in the championship.
Well,
you never know in this bloody sport, do you, what can happen? But I think people are as well. This always, I see it on like social media all the time, and it always comes across as really condescending. And if that's how it comes across now when I say it, I really don't mean it that way. But I think there are some newer fans that sort of maybe joined in 2021 who are maybe looking at now going, is this what F1 really is? And I'd argue that, and I've made the point a million times, but 2021 was very much the exception and not the rule with Formula One. We don't always have one team dominating, but, we do have those periods, definitely. And we were, who said it? Actually, somebody made the point, it might have been Purple Zebra actually in testing, made the point that kind of 2007 till 2012, we were really spoilt.
Yeah, we really were.
It's just the way it goes. It's not all Drive to Survive drama and 2021 drama. As much as some people would love that, it's just not realistic. But that's why I could pick my battles, if you like. I'll look at a race and go, oh, Max has gone, Checo looks comfortable, what's happening behind? Bloody hell, Fernando, how did you get there? And that makes it exciting for me. So I think I also will always say writing the season off after one race is crackers, but you do you. Whoever you are, if you think that, you do you. A couple more points and then we're going to wrap it up for today.
Last year, you could have written off last year as Ferrari dominance until Leclerc started driving into walls.
I knew those questions were going to come up, but I'm not even going to. Yeah. Random Bosman from 2006 to 2013. Only 2011 and 2013 wasn't a good title race. We had some good races in those seasons, though, didn't we? But and some close fighting elsewhere away from the top teams. But 2006 was great. 7 was great. 8 was great. 9 was one of the biggest shocks, and one of the biggest fairy tale stories in F1 history. 2010 was a very underrated season. We agreed in testing, didn't we? Fantastic season. 11, not amazing. 12 was just unreal. So yeah, it kind of spoilt in that period. Definitely. 2002 Ferrari used old cars for the first 4 races. Exactly, Dr. Dredd. Ferrari could turn up with last year's car and still bloody dominate, couldn't they? And then go, here's our new one. And everyone goes, oh no, lads, come on. Just give us a break. Drive the Minardi.
2011 gets a pass for Canada.
Yeah. Well, that was the length of the whole season anyway, wasn't it? It felt like it, watching it on TV.
Let's be honest, it was literally more than 3 Monzas long. Because a clean Monza's usually done in like an hour and 15, hour 20. And we were watching that for 4 hours and 7 minutes.
So a viral says, do you think Mercedes could pull the Uno reverse and copy Aston's car? It sounds like Toto hinted at it with the comments to Ted Kravitz post-race. I don't know if they will, but I will say this. They're more likely to copy the Aston than they are the Red Bull. I think there's maybe a bit of pride there.
That would be
irony.
So awesome.
Would we call it the Black Aston?
Well, if you think back, it wasn't Mercedes that were complaining. It was other teams that were complaining.
We'll call it the Black Aston Martin if they do. That'll go down well. No,
Blaston.
But God's sake. No, but it's like, as we said earlier, you know, it's clearly not the engine that's the problem, is it? That engine with and gearbox and everything else with the Aston concept is working, but on the Mercedes it's not. So that's clearly where the issue is. I don't know what they're going to do, Mercedes. I really, really don't. And I hope that for the sake of the season, really, we want to see Mercedes in the mix with Aston and Ferrari and taking a fight to Red Bull. I hope they can turn it around, but if not, what I would say is that with Aston in the mix, at least we are still looking like we have 3 teams towards the front that can spring a few surprises. I'll tell you what then. I'll throw this one at chat and I'll throw it at you as well, Jonty, before we wrap things up. And I'm going to throw it in as a poll. You can pop your answer in as well, but I'm going to start the poll. Will Fernando Alonso win a race in 2023? Is going to be my question for you to wrap things up with while we fin. In fact, I'll change that from test to yes. Will Fernando Alonso win a race? Test daily. So there you go. You've got about 5 minutes to vote on that poll. What do you reckon, Jonty? I'm gonna believe the hype for one more day and say yes, he will.
Yes, definitely.
Where?
Yeah, look at
anywhere.
No, see, you look at last year. Mercedes won a race, and they were a lot further away from Red Bull and Ferrari than Aston are now. I mean, a lot further. They were at least double the pace away from Red Bull than Aston are at the moment. They did develop well, and were closer by the end of the year when the race win came. But at the moment, yeah. So, where?
Well, here's the thing as well, while you think about that, Jonty. Even if Red Bull do continue this and absolutely dominate the season, we're going to get a chaotic race somewhere. Red Bull are likely to have some kind of problem, mechanical or a crash or whatever. If Fernando Alonso keeps himself in the position or in and around the position he is or was today, then he could be the one with his experience in that car to pick up the pieces. It might not be necessarily on pace, but like I said, there will be a chaotic race at some point, and if anybody's going to pick up the piece on that, it's going to be your Fernando Alonso's, your Lewis Hamilton's, your massively experienced drivers, aren't they? So I think he will, and maybe I'm being naive, but I don't care. I'm going to believe it.
Just to link into one of Fernando's best ever drives, I'm going to say Baku.
Best ever drive. Oh, was it the one where he was on 3 wheels at one point?
2 wheels.
2 wheels.
He drove 3/4 of a lap with only 2 wheels and still brought the car home in 7th. and it was that dog turd of the McLaren. So if he can do that, he can win there with an Aston.
I'd love to. I'd love to see it.
Because Verstappen and Perez take each other out at the on the first lap and collect Leclerc at the same time.
Oh, it's a full prediction. There you go. That's your Baku prediction sorted. I was just going to say that he does need urgent, and this is a matter of importance, really. He does need to get at least one more podium this year, because if he ends up retiring in a couple of years on 99 podiums and Sebastian Vettel retires on 299 starts, I'm going to go bloody mad. Round them up, lads. Come on. I'm not having it.
Well, that was annoying the first time he bloody retired, because he retired on 1,899 points. It's like, come on, one more bloody point.
Thank you very much for the super chat from Scott. Says, thank you. Missed this chat the last 3 months. I think you mean, I'm assuming you mean 3 months, Scott. I'm gonna throw an assumption in there. Says, note, Verstappen did not lap a points finisher even with today's dominance. Thank you very much, Scott, for your super chat, which I'm going to just say, just to make a point on that, either maybe that dominance isn't as dominant as we thought it was and the field's much closer, or how much was he cruising towards the end? Well, I'll say that, a 36.3 was his final lap. Sainz was a 38.0, Alonso was a 37.4, Stroll was a 37.9. So, I mean, it wasn't, the fastest lap was a 33.9, so it's not like he was, well, say that was 3 seconds slower, actually, so that's not going to be right, is it?
I think it's how much everyone else has caught up.
Yeah. It's a good point. Yeah, no, thank you very much, Scott. I appreciate that one, mate. And thank you to everyone for your super chats. And I should see what this poll says. It might surprise you, Jonty, the result, honest. So, will Fernando Alonso win a race in 2023? 83% say yes, 16% say no, and once again, 1% have gone missing.
Yes, chat. Keep that positivity.
All season. And when I asked the question before Abu Dhabi, and you all say no, I'll be ever so cross. I want yes every single time we ask that question, because one day it may happen. One day it may happen, and this could be his best chance. Because I tell you what, I'll end on this. If Mercedes come back strong next year, Ferrari can sort out whatever's going on, and McLaren are back in the mix, and Red Bull continues to be up there, then it might be a bit tougher for Aston. I don't want to be negative, but it may not be. They may be the favourites next year. We'll see. But this could be his chance. This could be his big chance to get a win. Lots of podiums. And Aston Martin top 3 in the standings to make up for the fact that team missed out on it in 2020. Which apparently is my fault. But anyway, Jonty, we're going to leave it there, mate, before I start rambling even more. Thank you so much for joining me. F1 is back, so you know that, you know me. I'm buzzing. I'm perfect. I'm so happy. We'll see how I feel after about 20 races of this. If Red Bull is still dominating. But absolutely fantastic to have you here. And a good start to the season. Let's hope that field closes up a bit more, though, and makes it not just entertaining in the midfield, but entertaining right at the front.
Yeah, I mean, we've had much worse starts to the season than this, so I think we can be nicely optimistic and look forward to at least the next race.
Yeah.
And thank you, everyone, for choosing to watch us instead of Indy.
Indy's on?
Yes, it is.
Well, my plan to get into that went well, didn't it?
It may or may well not have been on my other monitor muted.
Fair enough.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Awesome stuff. I can imagine, like, you with like 100 monitors with the different racing series on just all the time, like what you're keeping up with. But yeah, thank you very much, mate, and I'm sure I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, see you later, chat. Bye, Sean.
Thank you to Jonty, and thank you to you guys as well for tuning into the first race reaction of 2023. Thank you for your super chats as well, and for your likes and your subs. Good to have you with us. If you have subbed, welcome. Lots to come this season. I will be back soon with some more content as always. And of course, next up, it's Saudi Arabia. So previews and all of that for the... Yeah, what was I going to say? It's just gone out of my head. For the remainder Do you know what? Forget it. I was going to say something really interesting then, and it just went completely out of my head. So I'm just going to. Thank you to Nick for your super late super chat. That's what we're going to call it, a super late super chat. Says, thanks all. Great race. Great chat. Really appreciate your support, mate. Nick is a new patron as well. So double thank you, dude. Really, really appreciate that one. Saudi Arabia next. Then we've got Australia. Then we've got bloody spring break. And then we go again for a chaotic season. But I'm going to leave it there. You can follow me on social media for what it's worth. Not that I'm all that active over there at the moment. Links are somewhere and the ats are on screen now, but I'm going to disappear. So thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And in the words of Fernando Alonso, yes, bye-bye.